Okay, I'd like to call to order this meeting of the Urbana City Council for Monday, December 12th, 2022. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Ms. Wu.
Here.
Mr. Evans.
Here.
Ms. Hersey.
Here.
Ms. Colasetti.
Here.
Ms. Bishop.
Here.
Ms. Wilkin.
Here.
Mr. Quisenberry.
Here.
Mayor Marlin.
Here. Before we move on to the business of the meeting, I wanted to take a moment to recognize and honor the memory of Senator Scott Bennett, who passed away suddenly last Friday. We're still all trying to process this devastating news, and I wanted to read this statement into the record. Illinois State Senator Scott Bennett was the sort of person we longed for in public office. He had a delightful sense of humor, the ability to work with people and politicians across the spectrum, and a pragmatic approach to the legislative process. His legal expertise, coupled with his life experience and integrity, made him the perfect for his role as a state senator. I attended the candidate forum in the fall of 2015, showcasing a number of people vying for the appointment to the Senate seat vacated by Treasurer-elect Mike Frerichs. Each candidate made the case for themselves. All of them were excellent. They brought passion and ideas to the table. But one person stood out for me, and that was Scott Bennett. It was clear back then that Scott had the ability to navigate through Champaign and Vermilion County, and that has proved to be very true in the years since. But what made him such a standout public servant was his presence in the district. He showed up, he listened to his constituents, and he did the work. You'd find him across the table, in the audience, at the meetings, and on the Senate floor working to find solutions. People felt a personal connection with Scott, and the only way you develop that kind of connection is one conversation at a time. We've lost a wonderful man way too soon. I deeply respected Senator Scott Bennett, and more importantly, I just plain liked Scott Bennett very much. So on behalf of the City of Urbana, I extend our heartfelt condolences to his beloved family, colleagues, friends, and our entire state. So we will move on to approval of minutes from the previous meeting of November 21st, 2022.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Mary Alice, seconded by Sharice. Are there any substantial changes? Okay, well, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? That motion passes. Next up are additions to the agenda. There are none. Next, we have public input. Does anyone wish to address the Urbana City Council? Please step forward to the microphone. Okay, seeing none. Move on to council input and communications. Mary Alice.
In addition to the mayor's offer of condolences to Scott Bennett, I'd also like to offer my condolences to the family of Lucas Cristobal from the Urbana Middle School, who suddenly died, and also to the family and friends of Sean Green, who was a staff member at Urbana. So I just wanted to offer my condolences to those families. Thank you.
Sharice.
And I'm going to piggyback a little bit on Mary Alice's remarks as well, because I was sincerely shocked last week when I heard of Sean Green, his passing, and I liked Sean. Sean was just a wonderful person to know. He made you laugh. He knew his stuff, and he and I worked together on a couple of things, just trying to work within my ward. Another thing I'd like to say is my condolences to the family of Scott Bennett as well. I work with his mom on the library board, and I always felt that when I did something that I felt like kind of hit home for everybody, the one thing that he always acknowledged, that he would send me stuff in the mail that, when I was in the paper with my appointment, he laminated it and sent it in the mail. It was the nicest thing for anybody to do, but in particularly for a public official that he's in, he covers my district and everything, but I don't consider myself anything special. And he did that, and it made me feel special. And so, and I think I even got to meet him at one event. And he just seems to be, he just seemed to be such a personable person. So my condolences to his family and his mom.
Any other comments? Jaya?
I don't know that I have much to add. I think we're all acknowledging that there's a lot of grief in our community right now. And just, I guess, to add, I had the pleasure of meeting and working with Scott Bennett in my other capacity on a number of occasions, and it is a major loss to our community. Someone who truly cared about the residents and gave you hope for what politicians can do. And so certainly condolences to his family, and just a major, major loss for our whole community.
Okay. James?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mayor Alice, for recognizing the loss of several people way too soon. I do want to say something about my friend Scott Bennett. It's really difficult to get past the heartache that I feel, and I know many of us feel, for his wife and his young children, the people that will miss his absence every day. I just want to add that the community and the state has lost a friend and a person who epitomizes what public service should be about. Scott worked with everyone. Scott made the person who was sitting in front of them, him talking to them, feel relevant and important and listened to. And he did not write off working with anyone to do something for the public good. And that's what we need in public service right now. Individuals whose goal is to serve the community and not themselves. And Scott is a beacon for everyone to look at as they consider public service and what it takes to do the right thing. Thank you.
Any other comments? Okay. Move on to unfinished business. There is none. Reports of standing committees. Councilmember Colasetti.
So we have one item from the Committee of the Whole. That's ordinance number 2022-12-049, an ordinance approving an amended IGA for the Champaign County GIS Consortium, adding a new member, Village of St. Joe. And I'd like to make a motion for approval on behalf of the Committee of the Whole.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Moved by Jaya, seconded by Chandra. Further discussion? Okay, will the clerk please call the roll?
Ms. Wu,
Yes.
Mr. Evans?
Yes.
Ms. Hersey?
Yes.
Ms. Colasetti?
Yes.
Ms. Bishop?
Yes.
Ms. Wilkin?
Yes.
Mr. Quisenberry?
That
Yes.
motion passes. Thank you. Reports of special committees. I don't believe there are any. Reports of officers. I did want to announce that there will be no city council meeting on December 26th. That's the week between Christmas and New Year's. Next item is one item of new business, ordinance number 2022-12-052, an ordinance levying taxes for the fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2022 and ending June 30th, 2023. Human Resources and Finance brought this. And Elizabeth Hannon will be here.
So this is really just finalizing what we started and discussed at length on November 21st when we passed the estimated tax levy. So this is the final step in that lengthy process that we talked about. There is
One significant difference here, which is that we did get our final actuarial report on the pension levies, and we've actually, in 4 years, completed the transition to our new funding path. And so those levies are going down. And so while maintaining our consistent tax rate, we're able to levy a little bit more in the general fund, which helps to support all sorts of city services. But otherwise, same dollar amount, same tax levy that we discussed back in November.
Any questions for Elizabeth? Mary Alice?
So seeing as we just approved the one for our township, and we expect not to levy as much tax due to Carl, our question is, does this include the amount for the TIF2 properties coming back on the tax rolls? And does it also account for potentially for any of the properties from the hospitals coming back on the tax rolls?
So as you know, we always levy high and then we
Right.
cap our rate. So it should account for TIF2 coming back on the tax rolls. Several years ago, we decided we're not going to try and anticipate what's going to happen with Carl and the hospital taxes anymore. And so if those do come back on the tax rolls, what could happen is we actually have a lower tax rate for a brief period of time, and then we can capture that in the next year.
Okay, thank you.
Grace?
Thanks. I had a question about the library. Is it just standard that we just increase that amount 5% each year, regardless of how much the city EAV portion goes up?
No, it's not a standard percentage increase. What we do is in the budget process, we look at their budget, and they basically follow the same rules as all of the city departments in developing their budget. And then based on their budget, we determine what the need is for property taxes to support their budget. So, you know, some years it's been a little bit lower than that. Some years it may have been higher. But basically, we're supporting the budget that you all saw back when we reviewed the budget in the spring.
Okay, thank you. And then about the pensions, I was struggling to still understand that in your chart on the bottom of page 2, because it looks like the actuarial report versus the transition plan, there would be an extra $48,000 to police pension and a decrease of $588,000 some to fire pension. Am I reading that correctly, or could you explain those numbers
Right.
a little more?
Correct. There's a small increase in police pension. There's a large decrease in fire pension. But overall, that puts us on that path to 100% funding in 20 years. So that is based on, at this point, because we're 4 years in, amortizing the unfunded liability over the next 16 years.
And so the actuarial report, is that kind of a more accurate representation of where we are versus the transition plan that we've been going on for years?
Correct. Well, the transition plan we developed in 2017 or 2018, and so obviously that involved projecting numbers out into an unknown future. So at this point, this is more accurate than the transition plan.
And then I was trying to remember in the notes and things, and I couldn't find it on the new way the website's organized. But there was something I recall, I don't know if you recall or could clarify some, about a company that's the same company that's doing our actuarial report that's also doing something with, is it FOP Union or the department? It's a non-conflict, but it is something, the same company having to do with both of those things, right?
Correct. So Lauterbach and Amon has been doing our actuarial work for the pension fund for a number of years. And then you recently approved them as our new audit firm. So within the firm, those are totally different work units and different people, but because they're in the same firm, there's an independent third party that looks at the actuarial reports and just to make sure that there's no conflict there. Because the actuarial reports provide information that becomes part of our financial statements.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Elizabeth? Is there a motion?
I will move approval of ordinance number 2022-12052, an ordinance levying taxes for the fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2022 and ending June 30th, 2023.
Second.
Moved by Mary Alice, seconded by Sharice. Further discussion? James?
I just wanted to revisit the town board conversation earlier, and that is that the city is a home rule city. And so the thing that the town board has to do to avoid losing ground because of tax caps, the city does not have to do, so that we don't have to accommodate all of the potential of Carl properties coming back on the tax rolls, because we can move things around in a more free way than the tax cap controlled municipal entities can.
Elizabeth?
Correct, but I do want to mention that our financial policies do cap our tax rate, which is the reason for one of the abatement ordinances here. So we've maintained a stable tax rate for a number of years, even though, right, our authority to levy taxes is virtually unlimited.
But we can get back to that rate if those
Correct.
come on board and stay within our own rules.
Correct. We can't do it this year, but we could do that the following year.
Grace?
Thanks. And then if I could follow up with that, another clarifying question, because the abatement is saying even if there's more money for some reason for the county clerk to reduce it to the rate that we've already set, which is not increasing. Is that right?
Correct. One of those abatement ordinances says if the calculated rate would be higher than 1.3499, then take that out of the corporate levy, which is the part that goes to the general fund, to make the rate 1.3499. So that's our self-imposed tax cap.
And does this levy include any changes, or this is maybe what James was saying that I'm still not quite getting? Does this include things like the TIF2 EVA going forward and possible things playing out with Carl, or that would be something we would change later?
So I'm going to say the way the property tax system works in Illinois, we don't know what the final assessments are when we levy taxes. So we've anticipated increases in assessments, not to the extent that it would include, for example, the Carl properties, but would certainly cover the TIF properties coming back onto the tax rolls. But it's a little bit of a shot in the dark, just the way it works.
So under this current tax levy, say if in 6 months in this fiscal year, there was some big tax payment from Carl being incorporated, just hypothetically, would we be able to accept that, or we're already capped at our levy?
We would not capture that in 2023, which is when we'll receive these property taxes. But because we're not subject to tax caps, we could come back and capture that the following year.
Like capture 2023 in 2024?
Right, so we received 2022 taxes from this levy in 2022 and 2023. We can't go back and couldn't go back and capture that for next year's revenues, but next year when we levy taxes in 2023, we could capture that for the following year.
Okay, thank you.
Further questions? Okay, we have a motion and a second. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Ms. Wu,
Yes.
Mr. Evans,
Yes.
Ms. Hersey,
Yes.
Ms. Colacetti,
Yes.
Ms. Bishop,
Yes.
Ms. Wilkin,
Yes.
Mr. Quisenberry.
Yes.
That motion passes. And with no further business before the city council, this meeting is adjourned.